Lovely. So to those of you who are on Zoom, again, my apologies. If my voice somewhat concerns you, please, I'm feeling fine and I'm feeling well. I just lost my voice and I, had a number of speaking engagements and I think I overused it, but that's okay. It will come back and text will speak for itself. So again, those of you who are in the comfort of your home, who have new handouts, this is a new class for me, the wisdom behind the mask, please. And the reason for those, they're not necessarily connected. It's a continuation of the class, but the class is not, the topic matter is sort of, flows on its own from one class to another. One of the interests for me was to open up the book of Genesis and start looking at stories of deception. And out of 50 chapters, I have to say that I don't think there's 2 chapters that doesn't have something taken from somebody else that they didn't want to lose, somehow, somewhere. And I thought, even so, cross-culturally and anthropologically, the mythologies have tricksters everywhere. In other words, if you look at the Greek mythology, a professor of Hebrew Bible, who is retired now, Dr. Sperling, who was my mentor throughout university and then at graduate school, and then I spoke to him regularly. He said, and I said that last time, that gods are terribly mischievous. They steal wives. They make children where they're not supposed to. So he said something very interesting. He says, it makes our God look like a mensch. So in other words, whenever Elohim is very angry with Jewish people, keep in mind that in a pantheon of traditions, Darling, are you looking for a hand? No? No, okay. In a pantheon of traditions, he's like a man, in other words, God of justice. He wants to, God of justice, right? So, but what I try to understand is that if you have 5 books in a Torah, and they probably existed separately, and then they were put together, then they were blended into this important document. Why so much of it is all concentrated and complicated? And so I start looking at the nature in general. And I would say that in my very limited and superficial research, nature favors deception, left and right. So the first class started with looking at, chimpanzees who don't have morality. They're animals. They are here to eat, procreate, and force. They have instinct to take care of their young and so forth, so on, which is very beautiful. But they also steal repetitively, and they steal everything, food, sex, you name it. They will, very, very mischievous in this respect. So then I brought you a midrash, which our rabbis and sages thought a lot about our behavior. And Torah probably is a reflection, well, not probably, is a reflection of what they saw around them. And so I brought you a midrash, which we've studied, and it was striking. And that is, in creating a human being, there are 4 sort of groups of angels who argue whether to do it or not to do it. I'm just reviewing this with you to bring the framework. And who are these angels? One is kindness, truth, justice, and peace. That's very wonderful groups to be with. And they are arguing, should the human being be created or not? And then there are 4 of them, there is a tie between human beings should not be created and human beings should be created. And to break up a tie, God has to exile one of them. And which do you think goes down? truth being thrown to the ground. And then it springs up from the ground. And they have a proof text. You know, the sages are very, very smart in the sense they will use the Torah for advantage of teaching, of mechanism of education. So truth eventually will spring from the ground, but it's truth that goes in creation of the human being. So, difficult topic, a very I thought it was a pretty brave, like, how do you talk to people about lying? I mean, you know, it's not exactly a popular subject, right? Nevertheless, what we know from children at a very early age, they deceive because they want more chocolates. You tell them not to go into the drawer, they will. Like, they are, and they will pick up on cues very, very quickly what to say and not to say. Because you can't survive on truth alone. Just imagine to come to someone else's party and to say, birthday party, that's all I get. Like immediately mother whisks you, into another room and goes, you can't say the truth. Then you have to figure out, some things you say, some things you don't say. Who do you say it? You become politician very quickly. Okay. So this is the framing, is that the truth gets thrown to the ground and creates human being. All right? Because other options that human being also able to evolve, able to fix, able to come to an understanding, able to grow. And that's a great, incredible, incredible optimism that we are malleable, that we don't just have to jump in a lake and to say, we're born, with this absolute defect. And nothing ever, my love, nothing ever can help. So I worked from a number of different sources. Again, I'm not a neuroscientist and I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm a counselor. I have some degree in that. But I've relied on great people who study Solixing's son, The Liars of Nature and the Nature of Liars, his research. What was fascinating, and I will come to it later, but that after giving you one of the researchers, I think it was Howell, who came afterwards and said to me, by the way, there's been a question about this person's research on lying. Which just about killed me, because I said, you mean somebody was lying about lying? I was like, so complexity. Nevertheless, great storyteller, and there's still a lot to gain. So we'll go from here. So number 2, would someone, yes, ma'am.
My grandmother had this statement that when the tablets were broken, the pieces all picked up, and the poor picked up law, and the rich picked up, steal, rob.
That's great. I never heard this. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I never heard that. Wonderful. So number 2, would someone volunteer to read that paragraph about what may surprise you? So he's looking at the nature at the moment. Would someone volunteer just to read that little paragraph? Thank you.
What may surprise you is that cheating doesn't require a brain or even a neuron, as many plants are cheaters as well. For example, most orchids mimic the aromas of their pollinators' food. Around 400 orchid species, however, evolved a more audacious tactic. They fool male pollinators by mimicking the smell and appearance of female insects to take advantage of eager males who seek opportunities to mate.
How do you like that? It's like, when I go to what was it? Was it the mosque? They were selling the male, right? The male perfume. What is it? Not perfume, but a cologne mask, right? That it draws, like it was a whole advertisement. It draws women towards it. So I always was wondering if I actually should be turned around. Women should wear that. If you like the smell, you should be wearing that. That's how you want to smell, not somebody else. Anyway, for another discussion. So frankly, we get it in a natural world. Right? But I brought you forward on the second page. We will you have Hebrew and English, and that is the story of Yehuda and Tamar. The story of Yehuda and Tamar is a great surprise because it's kind of hidden in the. Do you need a handout, hello? cannot use it. Okay, good, you have it. It is sort of hidden in the narrative of Joseph. So not that narrative of Joseph doesn't have enough deception, but Yehuda and Tamar, you added to the pile. What makes Yehuda and Tamar narrative both surprising and fascinating is that you have this woman who comes from outside fold, who is married, her husband dies. There is such thing in the Jewish law, and that is to make sure that the line of the family continues. The younger brother, the next brother, might be older as well, but anyway, would marry the widow to perpetuate the line. There are a couple of things about it that sounds bizarre, and yet, like imagine Thanksgiving dinner, going, oh, he's your husband next. It's lovely. It's going to go really nice. But what's behind it is that a woman would have a protection, and she would stay within the family, or otherwise she's destitute. So it's hard to read. Nevertheless, that is so. She marries the second son. Yehuda has 3 sons. The second son is not so thrilled to father a child with this woman because it's not going to be his, it's going to be his dead brother. And he does unspeakable in the Jewish tradition. He throws the seed on the floor. Okay, we're all adults here. Okay. That displeases God terribly, he dies. Okay, now we have a third son. He's young. Yehuda is not thrilled with the fact that 2 of his sons died in the presence of this woman. He deals with it by sending her back to her parents' house in a widow garb and says to her, you wait. When my youngest son will become of age, he'll marry you. And you will be redeemed. You can have a family. She waits. She wears a widow garb. What happens is that Shelah reaches the age, but Yehuda, does not give her this man as a husband. So what does she do? Let's read. Would someone volunteer? So it's called Levirate marriage, which practiced and then abandoned and then practiced again. Again, where you get a lot on Levirate marriage, and it's very important because it's a social construct of protection, is in the story of Ruth. Everyone with me? Very important. And anytime text goes into this detail, and then he took the shoe off, and then he went to the elders, and this one spit, and this one went over here and said, no, he's not going to do it. Whenever texts get that specific, because in the Torah, in our tradition, you can skip 300 years, no one blink an eye. And then all of a sudden you get a story about taking off the shoe. The detail all of a sudden becomes important. So you ask the text, why? Why are you telling me this? What is it that you've written, that the reader, earlier reader, is worried? What is the writer worried about in terms of the reaching to the neck, to the reader? And what they're worried about is that the social system lost its practice. And you have to make sure that you can remember, take care of the widows, take care of the orphans. They're most vulnerable in a society. So, thank you. Would someone volunteer and read about Yehuda and Tamar? Okay. So we are, just a second, I just want to make sure I gave you enough to prepare you. So he did not give her the third son, and now Tamar was told. So the story continues. Yes. Okay.
Next story about it. We have a little bit of problem to hear you. Is it possible to the microphone?
I will be like this, real close. I'm going to become real close friends with this microphone. No. It's not. The problem is also the voice. It's more difficult for me to project, but I will be really, really close, like tango. I'm going to do tango with this microphone. Argentine tango, close embrace. Okay, fine.
So, you want me to start at the second paragraph of the?
No, you start. And Tamar was told.
Okay. And Tamar was told, your father-in-law is coming up to Timnah for the sheep shearing. So she took off her widow's garb, covered her face with a veil, and wrapping herself up, sat down at the entrance to Enem, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, yet she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he took her for a harlot, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, "Here, let me sleep with you." For he didn't know that she was his daughter-in-law. "What," she asked, "will you pay for sleeping with me?" He replied, "I will send a kid from my flock." But she said, "You must leave a pledge until you have sent it." And he said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your seal and cord and the staff which you carry." So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she conceived by him. Then she went on her way. She took off her veil and again put on her widow's garb. Judah sent the kid by his friend, the Adulamite, to redeem the pledge from the woman, but he could not find her. He inquired of the council of that locale, "Where is the prostitute, the one at Enaim, by the road?" But they said, "There has been no prostitute here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I could not find her." Moreover, the local council said, "There has been no prostitute here." Judah said, "Let her keep them, lest we become a laughingstock. I did send her this kid, but you did not find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the harlot. In fact, she is pregnant from harlotry." "Bring her out," said Judah. "She should be burned." And as she was being brought out, she sent this message to her father-in-law: "It is by the man to whom these belong that I am pregnant." And she added, "Examine these. Whose seal and cord and staff are these?" Judah recognized them and said, "She is more in the right than I, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he was not intimate with her again."
Okay, thank you.
This story is very personal. My late husband's brother was very orthodox, and suddenly he thought that he had to marry me. And there was so much nonsense that went on, but he was already married, thank goodness, and multiple marriages were not allowed. But this was a bit of nonsense in my life.
I actually don't think it's been practiced, but this is new to me, so thank you for that. I mean, this is really, 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 really traditional, right? It's, what is it? Yes, 1 year living biblically. Just a second, I'm coming. Yes, my dear.
My father was a Levi, and when he died, his brother Abe, who was next in line, was courting my mother because he thought he had to marry her.
With another woman, he had children. Oh, he had children with his wife, and he wanted to date your mother. What a family. It's really incredible. The loyalty, the love, the devotion to tradition, to family. Oh, very good. I'm going to go back to my mic. Right, just a second. I want to make sure everyone has a chance. Yes.
There's a reference to this whole story in Christian scripture where it says, he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Very good. Very good. Absolutely. I mean, kol hakavod, more power to Judah to be able to say, I'm in the wrong, versus coming up with some other scheme to be able to okay, we have two more. Yes, please.
I just want to say that the practice still is going on in different parts of the world. And I worked with a group of women who were fighting that practice. But the women, Kenya, Western Kenya, a certain tribe. But the men wanted to marry the women more because they would access all of their possessions, their home, their farm, whatever it may be. So it's still going on.
My grandmother used to say, show me the money and I will tell you where the dog is buried. Very kind of like an elegant statement for a rabbi to remember.
So one thing people haven't talked about is that this was the youngest son, and she had to wait all this time. But they don't address this issue. Why would this young man now want to marry? What is his viewpoint in here? Why would he want to be given, or why would he want a much older woman to be given to him? Maybe he didn't want to marry her. They don't get into this at all. We don't know, but they don't address that.
Right. I mean, he's a silent character. We don't know. I think the fear that he also can die, number one, and it's Judah's fear. He doesn't speak. We know nothing about his. I mean, the patriarch deals with it, right? As they said. And if it's not patriarch, behind him is a matriarch, who is a sort of a henchwoman, meaning she exercises the power through a vehicle, and it can be a man, her husband, or other women. But somebody is behind in the tent. I mean, especially Hebrew women, they're not silent. You just don't see the real power, right? But in this case, it's Judah, right? So what happens is she takes deception as a last resort. She agreed to do it the right way. We don't like the practice. We like the practice. It worked for that society because there was very few options, and very often we fared a little bit better than the rest of the nations around us. But she will be destitute unless she will be a trickster. And so she comes up with this plan, right? And the Hebrew plays with you. The place where she's sitting is Einaim, which is like Petach Einaim, opening of the eyes. That's the name it's called. Your eyes are open. Well, I don't know what is open, but certainly Judah's eyes are closed, right? I'm sorry I don't mean to be cross, but in other words, the text laughing. He says, you know what I mean? Whose eyes are closed? And that is Yehud. And we call ourselves Yehudim after him. But what I appreciate, and he comes through, but then Torah cleans it up. But that was it. There was never anything else between them. No, she gives birth to twins. Speaking of relating back to our text, she gives birth to twins. He does not marry her. No, I don't know what happens to her in terms of her financial. I mean, most likely in a small society she would be. They are his descendants, so he would provide for them and so forth. So the reason I chose the text is for several reasons. First of all, I think the boldness of a person who is desperate, or otherwise she's going to fade away. That's number one. Number two, I just think of this person, of a woman, who has to sort of numb herself to be able to do that. Her womb is a vehicle to give birth and to save herself, right? A man, sort of, who is very powerful, loses two children, two of his sons, who is frightened. As a parent, he's frightened. She brings him two more children. So in the end, the story, truth springs from the ground, okay? No child is replaceable. I don't care, 1 to 10. This is not a conversation about that. But the household is beginning to be filled with the voices of twins. And that's a beautiful thing. So out of deception, out of the ugly deception and wrong, something beautiful comes. I don't suggest this sort of behavior. I don't think it's a good idea. But when there is no choice, it's interesting how Torah shows you the courage of people who will bring redemption in a place of absolute emotional and spiritual poverty.
Apropos of what you were just teaching, Rabbi, it strikes me the tension in this story, the story of Esau and Yaakov. So on this human level, this sort of desperation and the motivation, but there's also a meta message, I guess, which is that this is inevitable and divine, because Yaakov and then his son and then through to Ruth and Boaz, again with deception. There's an inevitability about it, and there's that tension between the very human, I'm struggling with, that sort of very human, and then so who am I to say, I'm going to deceive because I think there's a greater good being served, or in this case, I can accept more if it's my own survival. Yes. But this sort of meta story, it's interesting how there's a tension.
I guess what I just said, God wants deception. Really, is that what? Well, right. It is intention. There's no doubt. Just a second. Yeah. Let me just. Yeah.
Truth was thrown out the window. Justice was achieved. No?
Beautiful. I hope everyone heard this. The truth went out, but justice was won out, right? So there's beautiful words. Absolutely. So would someone read number 4? It's one of my favorite. Actually, you have number 4. You have 1, 2. Yeah, 2.5 paragraphs. Would someone volunteer? Yes, it's exciting. Please. I assume we're among friends, right? I can talk like this. I don't want to shock you.
Okay. A species of the parasite wasp, Kotspia rubecola, has an unusual variation on this theme. Sexual competition among male wasps is intense. This is aggravated by the fact that female wasps remain in the mood for love for a short period after a prior mating. Thus, a wasp who has recently mated may well end up being reproductively trumped by a competitor. To avoid this, a male wasp that has just copulated may mimic and attract the female in order to distract the other males from his mate until her sexual receptivity wanes. Another good reason to impersonate a female is to get rich quick. Among scorpion flies of the species Hylobicatus apicalis, it is de rigueur for a male to present a female with a gourmet meal consisting of fresh insect corpse before she will even consider mating with him. Because the female is busy enjoying her meal while he is having intercourse with her, the size of the offering is important. A good-sized feast can lead to 20 minutes or more of lovemaking, whereas something more meager is good only for a quickie. If not complete rejection, hunting for nuptial brides is hard and dangerous work, and some males opt for a shortcut. They disguise themselves as females, and when an unsuspecting male sidles up to her, in quotation marks, with a juicy morsel, the male in female's clothing snatches it and flies off to offer it to a mate of his own.
I swear I did not make this up. This is... Comments? If there are a comment to make after this, I think my imagination has been maxed. Eric.
Look up the life cycle of the fig and ask whether it's kosher or not. Read the details of how a fig becomes the fig we eat.
Okay. All right, just a second. I just want to give you a handout, my love. If you would like to follow, please. I'm going to put them here. There you go. Yeah. Any other comments on this extraordinary passage? So, you know what I've done is I've kind of mated them, pardon the pun, right? Mated the selections from the Torah, from selections from the nature. I mean, we are animals, of course, evolved ones, but nevertheless, even so, sometimes I wonder. So what can, if animals cannot, and the deception for creativity and procreation is very much favored, and it creates diversity. I mean, the world is both very, natural world is very beautiful and very dangerous thing. But when morality steps in, and we have Torah, what can help us in, and what can help a human? So this is secondary source of Talmudic, from a Talmudic passage. So it's retold, and it's number 5. Would someone volunteer to read? Thank you, Leah. I'm coming to you.
The possibility of using religious symbols as a way to increase honesty has not escaped religious scholars. There's a story in the Talmud about a religious man who becomes desperate for sex and goes to a prostitute. His religion wouldn't condone this, of course, but at the time he feels that he has more pressing needs. Once alone with the prostitute, he begins to undress. As he takes off his shirt, he sees his tzitzis, an undergarment with 4 pieces of knotted fringe. Seeing that tzitzis reminds him of the mitzvot, religious obligations, and he quickly turns around and leaves the room without violating his religious standards.
Eric is commenting, it's a third paragraph of the Shema. So, there are a number of, first of all, Talmud is not shy at all between rabbis' addictions to, sexual reality. It deals with it as a part of the nature of the, consequences are heavy, but it talks about it very frankly, including, it's a humanity, including the addiction of certain teachers, of our great teachers. But what comes through the end is something higher than that. So let's take a look just for a moment on reading 6. And this is from The Liars of Nature and the Nature of Liars, which I think is an excellent redemptive paragraph in this conversation. Would someone be brave, please? Thank you.
In the recent study led by social scientist Elaine Cohen, researchers placed items inside a wallet. 3 identity business cards, which provided contact information of the wallet's owner, a grocery list, and a key. Sometimes they added a small amount of money, $13.45 in local currencies, and sometimes they did not. They then gave the wallet to a random person, claiming it was lost by somebody in the street. They repeated this procedure in 355 major cities in 40 countries. Although the rate of wallet return varies, one trend is overwhelmingly consistent. A lost wallet is more likely to be returned when it has money inside it than when it has no cash. This demonstrates that people generally have concerns for others' welfare. It's a testimony to the evolutionary wisdom inscribed in human nature. Win-win cooperation wins out over win, lose manipulation. That's why antisocial cheating is nearly always a minority strategy, both in humans and in other animals.
Comments?
More an anecdote than a comment, because I have lost a wallet and a cell phone. Both have been returned. And the wallet, I can't remember. It was a long time ago. The wallet was like long time ago. But I was on my bike and it just fell on some rocks. It was gone, but someone found it and it came back to me.
So I did extensive travel at one point in my life, and I ended up in Jerusalem. And I was sort of like extremely lucky, and I was on my own. So, vulnerability was quite, and I went from country to country with my backpack. I was quite a bit younger, and so forth. So I ended up in Jerusalem, and I go to the to Mall Shilshon, fabulous cafe in Jerusalem, and it's a person who loved visiting there was Yehuda Mihai. He rode there. It's a lovely place if you have a chance. You go up, it's an old building, Turkish architecture, and just the doorways and the large stones and little books, and they have poetry reading. Beautiful place. So I take a friend there, and my there were 2 backpacks, one heavy one, and then there was a small one that I would take on days. I would lock up the larger one and so forth. Small one. A group of people came, sit down, and then a group of people leave. And I finish my meal, so forth, so on, and I discovered I have no wallet. I swear to you, I thought, out of all the countries in the world, out of all the cities in the world, to have your wallet stolen in Jerusalem is not something I wanted to tell anyone about. I was like, I really wouldn't mind if it was some other city, but how can you possibly talk about that? But, human beings are human beings. So it was just amazing. It was safe everywhere else. But, yes, please, Adia. And that is?
It's antisocial cheating is nearly always a minority strategy. I think there are studies that show the opposite. So, what's that?
Well, I actually am going to validate the research, but what they have found is those people who go against the trend, psychopaths, are unbelievably successful because they're going against the trend of human nature.
I don't think they have to be psychopaths. I think there are a lot of studies that show they're not psychopaths, you're just human beings. You take that walk,
There was a study done long ago, so long ago, it's before cell phones. It was with telephone booths in London, England. And they had people, actors, lining up to the phone booth. And the longer the line, the longer the person stayed on the phone. So think about that. If there was nobody in line, they made their call, meet you, and hung up. Human nature.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, that's it. So in other words, even time, you can steal time. Think about it, right? You're stealing time from somebody. That's fascinating. So I just want to kind of prepare you that the selections for this class were done on a sort of a couple base. So it isn't because I only selected this. I mean, first class was a little bit broader, but I brought this relationship between men and women and so forth. We'll diversify in it just a bit. So right now we're going to talk about Joseph, right? We're okay to go? Oh, what happened to my backpack? My little backpack survived. The wallet didn't. Oh, I never, the wallet, nothing. The wallet was not returned. And I was on my way to Nepal after that, and I was without money and credit cards. That's another story. And it was in Israel that someone helped me to redeem these things. It was in Jerusalem. So the story has a wonderful resolution. I did make it to Nepal, and I hiked on the Porno circuit, no matter what. So. That's very good. Yeah, that's great. No, it wasn't from me. So let's talk. I think the story of Joseph, I mean, Esau and Jacob are just so rich with these play on deception, right? It's like one over another. It's sort of like very interesting and complex. And, yes, the last time we talked about Rachel, our great mother, steals the idols, right, and sits in them. It's so whimsically and complex. I concentrated. Joseph's story is one of the largest narratives in Genesis, and so I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, it's enormous. It's a class in its own, meaning several sessions. So it just brought him a moment in a Potiphar's palace, right? And I thought it's interesting to see what happens, right, between a young, good-looking gentleman who is there to do the work and survive his servitude, and a woman in power. So, would someone volunteer, please? Thank you.
When Joseph was taken down to Egypt, Potiphar, a courier of Pharaoh and his prefect, a type of Egyptian official, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. Hashem was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he stayed in the house of his Egyptian master. And when his master saw that Hashem was with him, and that Hashem lent success to everything he undertook, he took a liking to Joseph. He made him his personal attendant and put him in charge of his household, placing in his hands all that he owned. And from the time that the Egyptian put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, Hashem blessed his house for Joseph's sake, so that the blessing of Hashem was upon everything that he owned, in the house and outside. He left all that he had in Joseph's hands, and with him there, he paid attention to nothing save the food that he ate. Now, Joseph was well built and handsome. After a time, his master's wife cast her eye upon Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused. He said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here, my master gives no thought to anything in his house, and all that he owns he has placed in my hands. He wields no more authority in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except yourself, since you are his wife. How then could I do this most wicked thing and sin before God?" And much as she coaxed Joseph day after day, he did not yield to her request to lie beside her, to be with her. One such day, he came into the house to do his work, none of the household being there inside. She caught hold of him by his garment and said, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and got away and fled outside. When she saw that he had left it in her hand and had fled outside, she called out to her servants and said to them, "Look, he had to bring us a Hebrew to dally with us. This one comes to lie with me." But I screamed loud. And when he heard me screaming at the top of my voice, he left his garment with me and got away and fled outside. She kept his garment beside her until his master came home. And then she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew slave whom you brought into our house came to me to dally with me. But when I screamed at the top of my voice, he left his garment with me and fled outside." When the master heard the story that his wife told him, namely, "Thus and so your slave did to me," he was furious. So Joseph's master had him put in prison where the king's prisoners were confined. But even while he was there in prison, Hashem was with Joseph, extending kindness to him and disposing the chief jailer favorably toward him.
Beautifully read. Thank you. In a long passage. Comments? I mean, most of you know this story. Give me a little bit more. Yes.
The reason we have so much of the Joseph narrative in such detail is that's the only thing of which there are written records in Egypt.
Interesting. Okay. Anyone else? Comments on this piece? What do we learn about Joseph? What have you learned about it? What do we learn about it? Yes, Yehuda.
It's just he's very honest. He doesn't want to betray his boss, and he knows that it's going to cost him more for a quick roll in the hay.
It's a sin towards God. Beautiful, because it's repeated very clearly, and God was with him. Sin against God. Very good. She belongs to another man. Yes? Esther?
And of course, she's the stereotype of the woman scorned. Right? But again, there's that whole other meta-narrative in this, which is this is all God's doing, right? This is a very convoluted way to get to where we have to get.
This is a convoluted way, the way to get. I mean, what's interesting is that Joseph gets training he would not have gotten in his father's house. He's running the household, and he's good at it. You know, the Midrashim tells us, because of the play on the language, he looked like his mother, and the father was weak with him because he looked like the wife he adored, Rachel, who dies in childbirth, with his younger son, brother, Benjamin. And he's near his father. He tells tales about his brothers. He's no saint, right? And it's good. That makes him real. But to run a household, to be successful, to be able to manage and govern, it is an excellent preparation for his next stage. That is, he's going to govern the prison and then the country. So he gets private household, he gets institutional, political, right? Who goes to prison? Either someone with a lot of money, right? Someone with political ties, someone who could have caused a revolution, not this year, maybe next year. You make connections. Have you ever watched the Tulsa King? Anyone loves to watch that? I work out to Tulsa King with Robert, no, hold on, with Sylvester Stallone. Would have never watched this on my own. I would have never watched Tulsa King. It's about mafia and so forth, so on. But Sylvester Stallone is fabulous in it. And he goes to prison for 25 years because he does not spill the beans on mafia. So he takes the code of honor and he does not talk. So he says in a joint. I've learned that. I've been in a joint. So he's in a joint for 25 years, but he comes out, he knows everybody. Oh, everybody who is anybody in the joint. Yes, Yehuda, please.
Well, one aspect that hasn't come up, if you go back to the story of Adam and Eve, you know, the woman is the temptress. The woman is the evil one. And here you have another one, you know, the woman is tempting the man. And I find with Orthodox Jews, it's always, you're not supposed to hear a woman sing. That the onus is because they said, okay. No, but the onus isn't on the man. That, you know, it's the woman, it's her fault. And it's like we have that our day in our society. She was dressed this way, she was asking for it. You know, it's that sort of putting the responsibility on the woman instead of on the man, and it's maybe based on these stories in the Bible where they portray the woman as the temptress.
Here, I just want to say that, you know, in the defense of a sort of male presence, is that if men have no control whatsoever, somehow they're so made infantile that when they see a woman's elbow, that's it, the whole thing goes down. That's it, I'm done, I'm with it, so there must be some elbow. I go, elbow like this, I want to see it myself, what have I missed? A knee, a knee. I'm wearing short, I'm wearing short sleeve. Can you imagine?
Just building on what was just said, and this really doesn't add any meaning to the story, what I'm about to say, but religious fundamentalists of any faith use a lot of these stories for various purposes, including false rape accusations. So this was the first thing that came to my mind.
No, it's very, very good. Just a second, you haven't, no, I'm glad you liked it. No. Okay, I will go.
The torn garment echoes back to his coat of many colors and the torn garment that they bring to his father, too.
Absolutely. They call her the she-bear, that God unleashes the she-bear. It's a bear, did I pronounce it right? You know, the animal, right? That he unleashes her and she goes after him. So I brought few midrashim to look at her. By the way, people who do the best job around her are actually Quran does. Her name is Zuleika, and she marries Joseph later on, and it's all cleaned up in the most beautiful way. And that's because Potiphar name shows up again in the Joseph lineage. I'll look at it differently another time. Let's take a look at Midrashic source, and that is, what could have helped this situation? Would someone volunteer and read these 3 Midrashic sources? You're afraid because it can be so controversial. God knows what I'll make you do.
Look, my master, I will slay him, she proposed. He replied, shall I be counted not only among the adulterers, but also among the murderers? If intimacy is what you seek, go to the one who was permitted to you, your husband.
Okay, so just a second, I just want to say, so this is when she's going after him in the house, this is the conversation that takes place. And she says to him, I will slay him. I will kill my husband. Okay? He replied, shall I be counted not only among adulterers, but among the murderers? She's ready to finish her husband off. Lovely, lovely woman who will make you kugel for Shabbos. This is what you want. Just charming, okay? And he says, he responds to her, you're permitted to your husband, right? Because you have a permission to. He says, I do not belong. Beautiful. Would you read the second one?
She brought him from chamber to chamber and from bedroom to bedroom until she placed him on her bed, above which her idol was engraved. Then she took a sheet and covered the idol's face. Said Joseph, this you cover, for you are ashamed before it. How much more should you be ashamed before he of whom it is written? The eyes of Hashem run to and fro throughout the earth.
Okay, it's beautiful, right? Like, and they have a proof text. It's fantastic. Let's do one more time.
The Egyptian women once gathered to behold Joseph's beauty. What did Potiphar's wife do? She gave them each an etrog and a knife with which to peel it. Then she summoned Joseph. As they gazed at Joseph's beauty, the knives slipped and they cut their hands. She said to them, if this is how you are affected when you see him only for a moment, how much more so I, who see him all the time.
Like, I don't need to go to a movie. It is like someone has to think this up, right? Like, imagine someone has to like discuss it. Somewhere they heard a line. This came down to us, and then it gets codified, and you have to read it, and you go like, this is good stuff. This is good stuff, right? Okay. So speaking of, like, if we can, sort of deal with, can religion help in any way to deal with our basic...
No, I just want to comment. This is exactly the opposite, Yehuda, of what you were suggesting earlier. Right now she's the one who's saying the same way that apparently the men say. She's saying, I'm not responsible. It's his fault because he's so beautiful.
Very
right?
good. Yeah, wonderful.
so
Very
it's So the women, so she's not responsible because she can't resist him, and the men aren't responsible because they can't resist her. So,
yeah, can I just say the choice of. I just want to comment on the fruit they choose to discuss. Have you ever tasted the etrog? It is so bitter. If I was hosting people, you can smell etrog, but I wouldn't serve it to you. And it's hard to peel. But it's amazing that they go, well, just in case, you might be also use it. Like the overlaying of tradition upon this, it's just exciting. It's like a great garment you touch and you go like, look at the texture. Oh, very good. Ah, fantastic. Sorry, Yehuda didn't have, those of you on Zoom, Yehuda had a great insight that etrog is hard to peel, so Yosef is hard to remove his garments from. Not with Adam and Eve, we didn't have that problem. But okay, yes, we're okay. Let's read the next, number 9. Thank you, yes.
Now that we had figured out how the fudge factor works and how to expand it, as our next step, we wanted to figure out whether we could decrease the fudge factor and get people to cheat less. This idea, too, was spawned by a little joke. A visibly upset man goes to see his rabbi one day and says, "Rabbi, you won't believe what happened to me. Last week, someone stole my bicycle from synagogue." The rabbi is deeply upset by this, but after thinking for a moment, he offers a solution. "Next week, come to services. Sit in the front row, and when we recite the 10 Commandments, turn around and look at the people behind you. And when we get to the Torah, and when we get to thou shalt not steal, see who can't look you in the eyes, and that's your guy." The rabbi is very pleased with his suggestion, and so is the man. At the next service, the rabbi is very curious to learn whether his advice panned out. He waits for the man by the doors of the synagogue and asks him, "So, did it work?" Like a charm, the man answers. The moment we got to, thou shalt not commit adultery, I remembered where I left my bike. What this little joke suggests is that our memory and awareness of moral codes, such as the Ten Commandments, might have an effect on how we view our own behavior.
Just wanted to break up a little bit our sensitivity to the topic and move us closer to another place of complex deception that leads to an ultimate disgrace, and that is a murder. And it's a story of David and Bathsheba, right? So I'm taking you now to the book of Samuel 2nd. And it is on page 6 for those of you who are on Zoom as well. And where we are now is David quite well established. He is in Jerusalem. There are wars all around, there's no doubt. He is, the text will describe what takes place and what results. It is a it's a fairly healthy length reading, so I would love to have some help with that. And we're going to wait till it's over, and then we're going to discuss a little bit more. So yes, please, would someone volunteer? It is page 6, excerpt 10. Thank you, Larry.
At the turn of the year, the season when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel with him, and they devastated Ammon and besieged Rabbah. David remained in Jerusalem. Late one afternoon, David rose from the couch and strolled on the roof of the royal palace, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to make inquiries about the woman. It was reported, "She is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite." David sent messengers to fetch her. She came to him, and he lay with her. She had just purified herself after her period, and she went back home. The woman conceived, and she sent word to David, "I am pregnant." Thereupon David sent a message to Joab, "Send Uriah the Hittite to me." And Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab and the troops were faring and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and bathe your feet." When Uriah left the royal palace, a present from the king followed him. But Uriah slept at the entrance of the royal palace along with the other officers of his lord, and he did not go down to his house. When David was told this, that Uriah had not gone down to his house, he said to Uriah, "You just came from a journey. Why don't you go down to your house?" Uriah answered David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are located at Sukkot, and my master Joab and your majesty's men are camped in the open. How can I go home and eat and drink and sleep with my wife? As you live, by your very life, I will not do this." David said to Uriah, "Stay here today also, and tomorrow I will send you off." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day. The next day, David summoned him. He ate and drank with him until he got drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep in the same place with his lord's officers. He did not go down to his home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab, which he sent with Uriah. He wrote in the letter as follows: "Place Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest. Then fall back so that he may be killed." So when Joab was besieging the city, he stationed Uriah at the point where he knew there were the most able warriors. Men from the city sallied out and attacked Joab, and some of David's officers among the troops fell. Uriah the Hittite was among those who died.
I cry every time I read this. If you ask me for a hero, for me in the Torah or Tanakh, would be Uriah. It is such an incredible character, an example of loyalty. So first of all, a couple of comments, and then I want to hear from you. So let me get this right. There's no running water. You have to take a bath. It's good. Our people took bath. I'm glad to hear I come from clean people. Okay. There are many places you can do a little rinse. I don't know why it has to be on a balcony, open roof. You know, flat roof, Mediterranean roofs, you get clothes, laundry, and so forth. Okay. First of all, it's on the roof, number one. Because Israel has, Jerusalem has hills, you will have taller, flat surfaces, meaning terraces, lower terrace floor. You can see onto the terrace, that's why he sees. Not only that, most likely, when you live someplace, you probably know where the palace of the king is. Did I get that wrong? Like, don't you know your neighborhood that where prime minister is living if you are surrounded? No. Mayor of the city? No. Of course. So I'm not the only one who's troubled by the fact that the only place she can bathe is actually on the roof. Yeah, makes sense. You don't make a mess in your apartment. Okay, fine. But the fact that he can see her and the fact that he's not in a battle. His men are fighting. And how does the story start? Just a second. During the time, at the turn of the year, the season when kings go to battle, Hashanah la'et tzat hamelachim. Okay? This is when kings go to battle. Where's the king? He's in his palace. So first of all, right there and then, you're not with your troops. That's number one. Number two, you have a woman who is needing a shower bath on the roof, and you can see her. Commentators have this wonderful midrash, fantastic midrash, that there was actually, because they were troubled by the same thing, there is a little kind of like a fence that she bathing behind, and a little bird was caught in it, and she knocked over the fence, and there she was. I don't have to tell you, if the king is over there, okay, you were adults. So that is to say that you can make commentary, but a couple of things interesting. He's all powerful as a king, and yet he cannot have someone else's wife. And he's doing whatever he can. King David does whatever he can to get Uriah into the house. Why? So when they're together, the paternity of the child will not be questioned. Because he's guilty. She's guilty as well, but he's guilty because the woman belongs to the man. Sorry, ladies. That's the, right? She's married. Uriah, palace is filled with gossip. I have a strong feeling that when she came for a cup of tea to see the sovereign of Israel, someone else saw her carrying a little cake or something to add to a drink. And they saw her leave, and she probably visited a few times. And someone sent for her and so forth, because remember, there's a messenger who carries the message. So most likely Uriah is well aware of what takes place, because there are rumors. And he will not take the bait. And he will stay outside the door. He says, how can I go and lay with my wife and receive comfort from my woman, from intimacy, when my men are out in the field in trenches, in the heat and in the cold? I can't do that. He is really a beautiful person. And what King David does is he sends a letter with him to have him murdered. Sweet King David, it kills me when I read this story. And of course, God is furious, right? The child of this conception dies. King David is beside himself. He's falling on the ground, he cries, he doesn't eat. Child dies, and courtiers come to him and says, child has died, and he gets dressed, puts himself together, and they are bewildered, and they said, well, how is it you were so broken? And he said, while my child lived, I prayed, now he died, he will not come to me, I will go to him. He says these very, very powerful words. He will not come to me, I will go to him. And then he goes and becomes a husband to her, to Bathsheba. He comforts her. So you see humanity of a person. He comforts her, she becomes pregnant, and that is King Solomon, who will build the temple. Truth is thrown out of the window, then it springs from the ground. The way things work it out, I would like to write it other. I think between the baby and Uriah, your heart broken, and my teacher Moshe Harbertel in Hartman said, this is when King David loses control of his family. He has other children. Remember, when Nathan will come to confront him, he's a prophet, he says, gives him a story about one sheep versus man who has only one little animal, and the other man who has all many, and he takes away from him. And King David says, the man should die. He says, you're the man. He has harem. Go ahead, you have women, it's not a problem. You want this one. He only one wife. What follows is deconstruction of the family. For Nathan says, the sword will never leave your home. Amnon rapes his half-sister. Excuse me, Absalom. It's okay. Absalom, another brother, swears to kill Amnon. Absalom will rebel against his father David. The family crumbles. And the reason and Moshe Harbertel says the reason is the fall of morality from the patriarch. That even in his teshuvah, in his terrible, he does teshuvah, it destroys the moral fabric of the family. The murder of Uriah is profound. David has a great PR. He's very beloved. You know, he's human. Hard story. So comments from you. Yes, my love, just a second. Someone had a
So this and the stealing of the blessing has always been my most difficult struggle in Tanakh, I guess. But as Laurie was reading, or who was reading it this time, I had this thought about Uriah, who clearly was an incredible soldier and a total victim in this for sure. But is there a message that he was overzealous and that in fact his wife deserved his presence and comfort as well? Like, could you read it that way? And in that way, not that he deserved what was coming to him, but it gives you a little bit of wiggle room. So this guy's like, completely martyred. That his choices are also interesting, right? That he's denying his wife his comfort for the sake of the loyalty to his fellow
Soldiers.
which probably in a war situation is not unrealistic, right? That men
No,
can't go back to family life because they're caught up in battle.
there is that. You can read it. I see that. It's interesting in the last one of the last paragraphs, Uriah answered David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are located at Sukkot, and my master Yoav and your majesty men are camped in the open. How can I go home and eat and drink and sleep with my wife?" The ark and Israel, there's 10 commandments. The ark is actually in Sukkot. There's a religious, absolutely, it's a spiritual sort of a significance. The ark that has 10 commandments, right? So I can't.
One of them being adultery.
Exactly, very good. One of being adultery. I can't comment on Uriah's qualities as a husband, military man, or we ask awful lot. We want these great people to conquer enemies and so forth, and then they're going to come home and become, your therapist or whatever, your best friend. It's unfair. Very often, the construct is unfair. You can't be everything to everyone. You're gonna be you will lose in some cases. The other interesting thing that rabbis will bring, and they said, well, she wasn't married really, because all husbands gave women a bill of divorce in case they get killed and cannot be found. She's actually was not married. Good, and I feel much better now.
It's amazing how much we can rationalize it. We can rationalize anything.
Because it's so difficult. Like ours, the sweet psalm maker of Israel, like this great, Melech David. It's a hard story. It needs to be told. And to give Bathsheba, she comes in like, she's this beautiful woman, very nice. She is one interesting operator. She learns an awful lot in the palace because there are a number of children, right? A number of children. My love. Hi, darling. Oh, you want to go? There's a number of children. King Solomon is not the first. But as David declines, she shows up and she says to David, do you remember? You promised me. You promised me. Do you remember that our son will inherit? Remember what we've been through? Our child will inherit. So that takes someone to be a very conscious operator, politically wise, like Queen Esther, to survive the palace. Okay? So I have a little bit lighter, but I think very worthwhile. Let me see, how are we doing? It is 1:15. Are you with me or are you tired? Tell the truth. Some of you have to go. We need to go? How many of you would like to stay? Can I see hands? Okay, and those of you who can't, I totally understand. So what's left, let me just say, what's left is, just my moment, is the story from Talmud and then a summation of the complexity underlying. So first of all, the story of the Talmud you would know, and that is from Talmud Gittin. And the story is about the fact that there is a civil war. I'm going to paraphrase it. You can read it on your own. Civil war in Israel, believe it or not, Jews killing each other. Everything we're forever afraid, or killing anyone else, but there's this between us. And Jerusalem is going to be sacked no matter what. It's going to be destroyed. It's terrible. And the sages will save whatever is there to save. And that is tradition. And they lie to save the tradition. And anything in order to create what we call rabbinic Judaism, which we mold and create from to this very moment. And that is, one of the great teachers is sneak out, absolutely hidden out of the Jerusalem. He pretend he's dead and so forth, so on. And they carry him on, in a coffin, and he saves. He says to Vespasian, general of the army, he proclaims that he will be the next emperor. And he says, how can I, and it's true, comes true. He says, how can I thank you? And he says, give me Yavna, and her sages and doctors, the healers. So he brings Judaism back, or not back. He saves Judaism by the fact that the temple and the service at the temple will be destroyed. The new chapter will be Rabbinic Judaism, okay? So let's just concentrate on page 8. I think the summary is very important, and that comes from Yuval Noah Harari, who I love to hear and to read. Would someone volunteer and read this? I took excerpts from it from all over the place, but I think it's a worthy one. Please, my dear, thank you. And if you just straight into the mic.
Blurring the line between fiction and reality can be done for many purposes, starting with having fun and going all the way to survival. You cannot play games or read novels unless you suspend disbelief at least for a little while. To really enjoy football, you have to accept the rules of the game and forget for at least 90 minutes that they are merely human inventions. If you don't, you will think it utterly ridiculous that for 22 people to go running after a ball. Football may begin with just having fun, but it can then become far more serious stuff, as any English hooligan or Argentinian nationalist will attest. Football can help formulate personal identities, it can cement large-scale communities, and it can even provide reasons for violence. Nations and religions are football clubs on steroids. So if you blame Facebook, Trump, or Putin for ushering in a new and frightening era of post-truth, remind yourself that centuries ago, millions of Christians locked themselves inside a self-reinforcing mythological bubble, never daring to question the factual veracity of the Bible, while millions of Muslims put their unquestioning faith in the Quran. For millennia, much of what passed for news and facts in human social networks were stories about miracles, angels, demons, and witches, with bold reporters giving live coverage straight from the deepest pits of the underworld. We have zero scientific evidence that Eve was tempted by the serpent, that the souls of all infidels burn in hell after they die, or that the creator of the universe doesn't like it when a Brahmin marries an untouchable. Yet billions of people have believed in these stories for thousands of years. Some fake news lasts forever. I am aware that many people might be upset by me equating religion with fake news, but that's exactly the point. When 1,000 people believe some made-up story for 1 month, that's fake news. When 1 billion people believe it for 1,000 years, that's a religion, and we are admonished not to call it fake news in order not to hurt the feelings of the faithful or incur their wrath. Note, however, that I am not denying the effectiveness or potential benevolence of religion, just the opposite. For better or worse, fiction is among the most effective tools in humanity's toolkit. By bringing people together, religious creeds make large-scale human cooperation possible. They inspire people to build hospitals, schools, and bridges in addition to armies and prisons. Adam and Eve never existed, but Chartres Cathedral is still beautiful. Much of the Bible may be fictional, but it can still bring joy to billions and encourage humans to be compassionate, courageous, and creative.
I think it's a good place to sort of sum up the fact that what our tradition brought forward, a couple of things. It's honesty. It does not make stories pretty, necessary. They are complicated. Our heroes are not only human but flawed. There is an element of redemption that comes when King David loses Absalom, his son who rebels. He falls on the ground and he cries, Beni, Beni, my son, my son. His son rebels against him. He will destroy him if he can. Being a father and a king is a complicated story. On one hand, you want future, because that's going to carry your line. On another hand, you don't know what you're going to get. And they're standing there going, are you still alive yet? Also complicated. So being a parental in this, but what I appreciate is the stories that are shared with us to see if we can find ourselves in a place of vulnerability, transformation, and redemption. And I wanted to share some research with you and some approach to it from kind of and what I'm hoping to be a holistic way of looking at nature, looking at our society, and looking at our beautiful Jewish traditions. So thank you for sharing this with each other, and thank you for those of you who are so faithful on Zoom. My apologies for having a voice that is not exactly my own. I'm like surprised myself. I don't know who's talking, but the fact that I'm talking is good. So I wish you well, and really it's a wonderful Shabbat study. So thank you, my love. Thank you. Yeah.